lifetimes of this contract that I will tell you about today meet the advocates of using contracts to gauge economic health. So a health warning or pre-warning is I will rely on some economics concepts. So those of you who have never had any exposure to microeconomics theory on basic and applied macroeconomics may have some trouble, but do not hesitate to ask the questions, and we will try to solve this. Now I would like to share the other document, which is in the same reader, and can you see my screen? Because to me it is not very
it's a white screen, what I see.
No, that's not good. Okay. So I think I have to stop. Let me just close this one. And now I start again. So why is this white? You should see my slide now.
Shadi, can you please confirm? I can see this white screen, and now it's a kind of bluish kind of. No, now it's white.
Okay.
Shadi, can you see the slides or no?
No, they're all white. Screen's still white.
Okay, hold on a second. I have to close this because my computer is doing funny things here. Yeah, I think I have to stop the full screen and first share. And then activate full screen. I think that should work, right? No, it doesn't work. Okay.
Are these your slides? Harald,
yeah, I have to restart the slides. I'm sorry. So I will start presenting while reloading the slides. So thank you very much for this opportunity, Sherry. And I was actually listening very carefully to Nikki. I know this area very well. I've worked in this area for several years, and I had a project actually that was very much linked to identifiers. 2017, I concluded the first blockchain project in the commission, where we showed that we can actually report in a unique manner and automatically have a unique presentation in a unique manner only once on the same type on the same financial contract, using basically a smart contract implemented on a blockchain. And we demonstrated this also with a live demonstrator, how this can be done. So following up on this, we had published a paper how basically the data infrastructure needs to be done. And I would actually mention to Sherry's point of over engineering that in a way our conclusion was that to get this done really well using a whole host of techniques, from document engineering, blockchain, various data management techniques, and so on. Actually, you need a lot of engineering. You actually need to engineer the entire business process of reporting using all kinds of techniques and to get this done. And when we saw that this is feasible, we wondered actually if we cannot represent all kinds of contracts in this manner, not only financial contracts that live in a very regulated environment and where you link to such things as the LEI, but you also link to well-defined recipients of the required data and so on. Can we not do something similar with just any contract, the private contract to trade anything, the most general form of contract? And then actually, if we can do this, can we not model actually the entire economy as such a network of contracts? And this is, of course, not a new idea. In economic theory, this has been argued for a long time, but the practical feasibility had not been demonstrated. So I will now try to open again the PDF, because usually this is more stable than the PowerPoint. I don't know why the screen was white. And then I try again to share my screen, and hopefully this time it works. So this looks good. So this looks better now, does it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so let me start by this basically stylized fact. When you look at, so to say, basic performance characteristics of large companies, and you look at, so to say, old companies, legacy non-digital companies, if you want, and some large digital companies, then you would notice that the digital companies have comparable market cap figures, but their number of employees is lower by an order of magnitude. Yeah, not by 5%, 10%, no, by an order of magnitude. And how can this be explained? Is this just is this overvaluation on financial markets, or is there something more substantial behind it? So it relates to the fact that GDP or the economy as we used to measure it over the last let's say roughly speaking since the big depression and classical macroeconomics has been introduced by Keynes, and then the macroeconomic models in the 30s and 50s. We have started to model the economy with a number of implicit assumptions that have not been questions for a long while, because actually the models worked well for policy purposes and to explain what is going on. But clearly, there are several reasons why this is maybe not a good way to look at the economy anymore. And we found that Diane Coyle's work on GDP is very nice and a very good introduction. If you are interested in this topic, we can highly recommend it. We have tried to probably go a bit further, and at the same time, I like this reference of David Hume, who was so much ahead of his time and had already this view of the strong interrelationship of human action. That value of human action very much depends on who you are interacting with, and the same action or the same asset can have very different values depending on in which networks they are integrated and who you are interacting with. So. And this is, I mean, this is quite a while ago, long before we came up with modern macroeconomics. So we try to see what happens if we take a dedicated network modeling approach to this digital part of the economy, and really model agents as as somebody who has a certain probability to enter into a contract with another agent that he or she meets, I mean, randomly, right? So there's a process that allocates you with a potential trading partner, and then with some probability you enter into contract with that trading partner. And then there is a second round, which of course Sherry is smiling, is of course creating the power law distributions, because this agent has another probability attached to him that you also enter into contracts with agents that are already connected to this agent that you are meeting. And then we also had the ambition, we could not completely deliver on this one. This turns out to be very, very hard. To model bankruptcy, so to say, the case where an agent goes out of business and is no longer available to contract with us. This is a very hard one. My friends at Oxford say there are some PhDs that try to provide solutions, but I have not seen them yet. But I take their word for it. But still, already the first part, the first two elements are very challenging, because as you will see going forward, they create very interesting distributional properties of such economies. So quick overview of what this means for model design and results. So basically, we wanted to see that in the output of such a model, you can see, so to say, the value, the benefit that is generated for each agent engaging in these contracts, in these trades. We want, of course, to be able to model the cost of contracting. We want to be able to replicate patterns that we observe in the real world, in the digital parts of the economy, such as Uber or Airbnb, etc. And of course, it would be nice if any such model would be abstract enough to have some general value that it does not only apply to a specific case you're looking at. As you saw already on the previous slide, I mean, you have basically these probabilities of engaging into a contract with your matches. You have contract cost explicitly modeled, and of course you have a measure of success. So if agents contract and increase their welfare, they are more likely to contract even more. And what we could show in the study and with this enterprise is that we were able to replicate power law distributions that we found in actual data on digital economies. We also saw that we can then basically, once we can replicate such data, it is a first step enabling us going forward to simulate changes to such systems, and of course the ultimate goal being that we can test different policy regimes or different regulatory regimes on such economies, and to see how it would change not only the cost of contracting, but the distributional properties, like speed of contracting, how the welfare is playing out, inequality, and so on. So here you see I put together some pictures to illustrate also for those that are maybe not familiar with network models. So in the upper in the northeastern part, you simply have an illustration what it means in a network, a view of contracting, to have different likelihoods to enter into contract when you meet an agent that is part of the population. So any dot here in this distribution is an agent that is a potential trading partner. But when the probability to enter into a contract with a random match is only 0.005, you see that the network is not forming really any interesting structure. When you slightly increase that probability of entering into a contract, you start a little structure emerging. But what is really typical of such systems is that there is a point where the probability of entering into contract for each individual match is still rather low, but suddenly the network that you create becomes very, very dense and quite complex. At least for visual inspection, it is already too complex to draw any conclusions from what you see. On the right-hand side, upper right-hand side, you see what is meant here with power distribution. So you see here that in the left panel, you see that in more classical supply chains, you would see a distribution like that, where of course there are fewer bigger players and there are many more smaller players, but suppliers and customers, so to say, are quite similar in the sense of these distributions. Whereas in the digital economy, in the case we have seen here, in the case of Airbnb, you see that the supply side and the demand side really qualitatively differ in terms of the distribution. So both have, of course, fewer larger players and many more smaller players, but the supply side has significantly larger players than the demand side, and you see that these distributions really do not lie very close to each other and are qualitatively different. And we wanted to understand this. Another aspect that is something you will meet often in the literature, and that was important for us to point out in this project, is that very often in theoretical work, that is, by the way, also true for financial network, for financial system and research. Very often you have symmetry assumptions concerning the the distribution properties of populations of systems that you're looking at. And this is even true for network-based analysis. And we saw it very difficult to point out, very important here to point out that we probably have to work with and accept the not so nice properties and working off highly non-symmetric, highly asymmetrical distributions of such systems. And if we want to learn about real-world digital economy, we need to sort of say compose with such highly asymmetric degree distributions here. So I think in the interest of time, I stop on this slide. Just a question on the data, and this relates a bit to the previous talk as well. I mean, in principle, there's a lot of data around. Public authorities own a lot of data. There is more and more open data. There are even some more and more data vendors and data that on the digital economy as well that can be found on the internet. We are actually we could actually have see a future development that even private firms are starting to share more of contractual data, if only they are provided with an environment that that enables sharing of such data without sharing strategic intelligence or strategic issues that are relevant for the firm that should not be shared. So we are aware, of course, of methods how this can be done. And what was surprising when I halfway through the project roughly, I presented this work to a room full of contract management practitioners, and we did a short poll, and it was quite surprising to us that actually the readiness to share data beyond your usual business partners or within your own firm was quite high if people were given the opportunity to share data in a privacy preserving and privacy enhancing environment. This was quite an interesting insight for us. And still on the data, what is also here important to know, and this also relates a bit to the first talk, is that we used in this project basically two different data sets. One was Airbnb data on Airbnb contracts, which is in the public domain, and another data set. There was a third one as well, but I mentioned the other data set was on a contractual network between Italian SMEs that have written contract with each other to share in so to say in exchange of innovation and to be able to share data with each other without getting into a position where it would be a problem from a competition point of view. And
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So is it a directed network that you're constructing, or it will be undirected? Just as long as two parties are entering into a contract, you say that they're connected. The direction doesn't matter.
Yes. No, the direction does not matter.
It's not directional. Okay. And also you have another 4 to 5 minutes. So
okay. So I want to get to the basically all the takeaways. So this is second to last slide, I think. So just to mention that we used it's not only the Airbnb data which is in the public domain, also the data that we got actually from these private companies, and the data we modeled from the business registries. So we had a third data set that was from business registries. I mean, Nikki had mentioned this kind of data. So data that you would link with something like the LEI, for example. It's actually not. I mean, I confirm what he had on the last slide. I mean, this data is not easy to work with. Actually, our experience in the project was that you need a whole host of data modeling techniques. So this is a real data science challenge. So this data is highly heterogeneous, and actually in the project we had you see just the number of software that we used to model this kind of data, and we had really a massive data science challenge to make this data operational and be able to ask meaningful economic questions to this data. So I really confirm the finding of the previous project. So finally here, this is the important slide, because the takeaways that we had are now the project is closed. We can share the. You can actually, if you want to read the report, you can basically go on Google and Google the EU bookstore. So EU capital letters for European Union and bookstore. When you Google this, you get the website of the European Publications Office, the EU bookstore, and there you Google modeling the EU economy as an ecosystem of contracts, and then you find the two tomes, the two volumes of this study, and you can read it at your ease. And basically, the three takeaways from this project were that we looked into. So one member of this project was a legal tech company who is helping companies to implement smart contracts as a contract management tool, and they did this in a way that is blockchain agnostic. So actually, you can use any blockchain that can run smart contracts. Underneath it, it is sitting on top of it, and while most of the time it still uses Ethereum, you could use in principle any blockchain. And we saw that actually prose objects have a lot of potential once they are embedded in a sufficiently rich data structure. So what is that? I mean, contracts are typically written in natural language, right? In plain English, and English law applies. Many contracts are written in English, and English law applies. And then basically, how can those objects become useful? You know, in terms of managing your data and to basically populate the digital economy. And there were very interesting propositions already how to work with prose objects to keep actually the full information that is in those contracts. And as if you read the report, you see that we have put quite some work on how to make these prose objects part of a structured data model where they interact with other kinds of data, but remain, so to say, in plain English, and can really interact with other data by using this prose object approach. And this is really, I think, a very, very interesting and encouraging finding, that that contracts can really be these connecting elements that can connect into a network very, very different parties that have otherwise nothing in common. You know, they are in different industries, they are of different levels of sophistication, etc., etc., and they're just connected by this contract. And this contract can be made itself a digital agent, that is connecting to different kinds of data sets. And this can be done in a way that you can really get into a complete, so to say, representation and even replication of the economic relationship. A second takeaway was
Harald,
that there seems to be.
You have 1 more minute, so let's try to wrap it up. And then there are questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there was an intermediate reminder that you did not give me. Okay. The second takeaway was that there seems to be a sweet spot based on the numerical simulation model that was developed in the project, where you have two things going together: a winner-takes-all logic on the supplier side, where you have this extreme power distribution, so very, very large agents connecting to many other agents, but going together with a very low entry cost for small suppliers and consumers at the lower end of the distribution. And that is of course very interesting, because this is a bit of a curveball and a challenge to an institution like the Commission, where we have competition policy and consumer policy and so on. And I think this is something where we need to follow up and to see how we can strike a good balance there. So we would not like to, to regulate away a large agent in the digital economy, and so to say, at the same time, regulate away these opportunities, this increased opportunity for very small agents in the digital economy. So very interesting point for future work. And the third one, and that will, I think, should be a lot of interest to Sherry. The third one was that maybe the digital economy is not the end of inflation, but we certainly have strong indications that it is the end of certain assumptions that are underlying assumptions or necessary assumptions for a pure play price Cournot competition. Yeah. And now I'm always pointing out at this point of the talk that one of my favorite economists, Alois Schumpeter, who is from my home country, Austria, more than 100, almost exactly 112, 113 years ago, pointed out that the macroeconomic assumption of duality, that you can look at cost minimization and profit maximization interchangeably, is a completely unrealistic assumption. And much later, Joe Stiglitz got the Nobel Prize for the impact of asymmetric information in markets. But Schumpeter, before the Nobel Prize was invented, and he died before the Nobel Prize was invented as well, he already pointed out in 1911 that typically the entrepreneur only knows its own cost. And actually is not in the position of the relevant information to actually engage in meaningful profit maximization. And the digital market structure is actually also not compatible with the assumption of atomistic agents. Yeah. So another implicit assumption of standard macroeconomic theory is that agents can be modeled as atomistic elements in a market, and they are not connected by anything else but the price mechanism. So the price is basically watched by everybody, and the price is coordinating actions of atomistic agents. What we see in digital economies is very, very different. There are many very small agents, but they are not atomistic, and they are not disconnected from each other. Quite to the contrary, they are highly connected. The digital economy is highly structured, and you can, quite to the contrary, discuss very different, actually, dimensions of disconnectedness and of the relative importance of agents. And price is only one information. The price stays relevant. Prices do not lose all their coordination capability, but they become one parameter amongst several. And when we did the forensic research into actually the process of contracting on a platform like Airbnb, we discovered that these relationships that connect agents with one another are strongly managed. They are very intensely managed. And there is a lot of detailed work actually going into the process. So what actually digital companies are doing, they are not so much competing on price. They are competing on quality, and they are competing on process. And process is linked to the cost that users of platforms are facing, but the link is highly non-trivial. So the link is, so to say, like the cost is one parameter that the user is observing, but it links to many different parts of a structured process. So you would not have a simple functional relationship between the two, because the process is so structured and multi-process that it would not be easy to say, I changed this part of the process and it would reflect it would trigger this particular change in the cost. Actually, you would not be able to do that. But this is really something that came out of the forensic analysis of the contracting onboarding process and all the different steps that actually define the contractual relationship between the host and the hostee in a case like Airbnb. And this applies to other digital economy agents as well. Okay, I'll stop here and would be very happy.